So I'll just go through this and then we'll leave some time for questions. If anyone has individual questions, I'll be happy to answer those. But dietary supplements have a legal definition, and that full definition can be found on the FDA website if you care to read it. But the key points to know are that there's very little actual regulation with dietary supplement market, and it's up to the providers of the products to make sure the products are safe and free from contamination and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of variation with the quality of manufacturers. And one thing that is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine is sometimes what I do is referred to as homeopathy. And this is not a correct term. That homeopathy is a whole different practice. It's governed by a whole different set of regulations, and it is not the same as taking vitamins and herbs and so forth. So I definitely need to update this slide. It says more than 30 billion is spent on supplements annually. I just looked at this last week and it's now over 100 billion. And during the COVID period, the use of dietary supplements kind of skyrocketed again because a lot of people are taking things that they think may decrease their risk of getting COVID or treating it if they do. So I had a lot of products that were out there that were not very scientifically based. About half of us use some type of supplement, at least one, maybe just something simple like a vitamin or fish oil, but the vast majority of patients do use something. And we know, as I said, they can both help your treatment and interfere with your treatment. So it just depends. You have to really know what you're doing. And I had a patient just this morning that came in with a box of Chinese herbs that had been sent to her from a relative somewhere in New York, I believe, and he just told her to take it because it was good for cancer. So she very smartly decided to ask about that before just taking it. And we really don't know what's in some of these products and whether they're contaminated or have additional things in there that are not declared on the label. We also know that cancer patients are even more likely to use dietary supplements than the general population. And that's kind of for obvious reasons, but as many as 81% of cancer patients report using some type of supplement. So that's just a huge number. And patients think that this will help maintain their health or prevent them from getting a disease, or they have avoided other prescription medications because they were afraid of side effects, or just didn't get good results from the medical treatment they had sought for a certain problem, and they're looking for other answers. And then there was a poll in 2018 that was a little bit disturbing that showed that more than a third of people believe that cancer can be cured solely through alternative medicine. And we do see patients, not terribly often, but on a fairly regular basis, that have decided to reject any conventional treatment and just pursue alternative treatment. And that's not integrative. Integrative means together with, while alternative means instead of. So we try to practice here by using the best of both worlds, and there is no alternative medicine cure for cancer. So the main thing we want to be sure of is that the products are safe, and even if they haven't been proven effective, if someone really wants to use something, I don't have an issue with that as long as we know that the product is safe and it's not going to hurt their liver or their kidneys or interfere with a treatment they might be receiving. And you can go into any health food store right now in Charlotte or anywhere really and find products on the shelf that have been banned in other countries as unsafe. But again, our regulations are so lax, we allow these on the market. And you see a lot of outrageous marketing of these products too on TV and print, internet, whatever. some of the problems that have been discovered with dietary supplements include everything from pesticide residue to contamination with heavy metals like lead. One children's vitamin, very popular several years ago, was found to contain more than the allowable amounts of lead, which is the last thing you want your children to have. And then a 2015 study looked at 22 probiotic products and found that 8 of them contained gluten, even though the label said they were gluten-free. So that could cause a real problem for people that have a gluten intolerance or celiac disease. And this is an issue here. I don't know if anyone knows what is going on here. This is caused by colloidal silver, which again, you can go in any health food store and find that for use. People ingest it, people use it topically, and it causes this permanent bluish gray staining of the skin in a condition called agruria. And there's really no way to reverse it. The silver molecules just deposit in the skin and they're there, you know, forever. So I just really think we need a little bit better regulation to keep situations like this from happening and to keep patients safe. This is an older study that I always include because it really illustrates what goes on in health food stores, and that nothing has changed really since 2003. It's only gotten worse, if anything. And that in this investigation, the person doing the investigating went around to 12 health food stores in the Southeast and asked the same question, and then based on the information they were given and the recommendations, they purchased the products. And out of the 13 products that were purchased, none of them met the label claim, meaning what was on the label is in the bottle. And then 2 of the products contain no active ingredients at all. And that's not unusual. So this is just some of a few examples of what you come across. And these are, you know, lose weight quick, no diet, no exercise, take the magic pill, and you won't have to work very hard at losing weight. And none of these work. None of them have any scientific evidence, but there's such a huge need for people to think they can take something and not have to do the hard work involved and get an easy result. So supplement quality problems are such an issue that there are 2, I think these are still ongoing, these 2 national lawsuits by state attorneys general offices in New York State and Oregon. And they found these mass marketers, you know, you recognize all these names, GNC, which is now out of business, Target, Walgreens, Walmart. Their house brands are some of the worst quality products that are out there. So I would avoid those at all costs. And these are, they may not say Target or Walgreens on the bottle, but I think all of these marketers have their own lines. And I would just be wary of those and purchase something, you know, more trustworthy. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But these products were looked at and found to be contaminated, or they had nothing in them except rice powder or lactose, you know, just something inert. And there's just really no punishment, very much punishment for companies that do this. And if they do get fined, it's, you know, I just think they see that as the cost of doing business. So when you have a huge market potential, now over $100 billion a year, and very little regulation, that just opens the door for bad players, and they're definitely out there. One of the tools I use on a regular basis is something called Consumer Lab, and this is something that you can also use. It's for the consumer. It is a subscription, so I think it costs about $42 a year to join that. But they are the lab that goes out and purchases these products from the shelf. And then based on the results, they put that whether they passed or failed and why. And then they also make a recommendation for their top pick, they call it. And that would be a product that not only passed the testing, but had some of the best costs involved, because you don't want to have a top pick be a product that costs 5 times more than a comparable product that's just as good. So it's really helpful when you're shopping for supplements. And then the other thing that's really great about that website is the scientific information. So if, say, your family member says, oh, well, you should take this herb for cancer, you can go and look on Consumer Lab and see, is there any evidence for that? This past year in particular, they've had a whole section on COVID and some of the supplements, vitamins, and so forth that have been recommended for that. They even tested masks to see which masks were the most effective and which ones were the most highly recommended, cost-wise. So it's really a very good website, well worth your money to join that. So beyond Consumer Lab, when you're out shopping for products, there are 10 or 12 or more sometimes different brands on the shelf. Like, how do you know which one to choose? And it's just, it's too random just to try and pick one on your own by asking the store clerk, who is untrained, and if they're trained at all, it's to sell products. So I would either use Consumer Lab, ask a trusted medical professional that has a background in this, which brands are trustworthy. And this is a question I get a lot. Like, what brand do you recommend? And it just depends on the supplement, on the vitamin, on the herb. There's no one company that makes all of those and does a great job. So for fish oil, for example, the good quality companies, that's pretty much what they focus on, just fish oil. They don't make that and vitamins and calcium supplements and so forth. So you really just have to know which product you're looking for to get a good recommendation on the company. And I do recommend avoiding multi-level marketing companies, which these are products that are not sold in stores, but they are sold person to person. And I start selling it, then I recruit you to sell, and then you recruit someone else to sell. And so that makes the products extremely overpriced because of the way the sales are set up, and everybody has to get paid. And just multi-level marketing in general, I'm not a fan of, just because there's been so many problems identified with that. And most of the people that get recruited into that never make any money. They only end up losing money. So there are a lot of mistakes that people make with supplements. And the one I see most often is too many. Sometimes people come in with 20 or 30 different bottles to look at, and there's just really no need to take that many. There'd be very little likelihood that every single one of those would be something useful. Patients sometimes will try to use a supplement instead of a prescription medicine, and that can definitely be an option, but it isn't always. Like for blood pressure, for example, people don't want to take a prescription medication, and they ask, what can I take to control my blood pressure? That's all natural. And there's some things that help with that, but it's not reliable enough. So you have to be really careful there. I mentioned using for weight loss. The other one, a big scam area, is sexual performance, men's potency supplements. That's a big one. Supplements can not only interact with your medicine, but they can also interact with lab testing. An example of this is biotin, that a lot of women in particular take that for hair, skin, and nails. And we know that biotin can interfere with thyroid function testing. And then last year, it came out that they think that biotin can interfere with COVID antibody testing. So I don't think a lot of people know about that type of issue. So it's really important to stop taking biotin if you're going in for any lab testing. And then, of course, there's something we call financial toxicity, which just means spending too much money on supplements. And I had, I think the worst case scenario I ever had was a patient that was spending over $3,000 a month on a variety of supplements for cancer and was struggling to do that. And just, you know, it was a very sad situation because there was just no need for that. So hopefully I was able to get them on a better regimen, more affordable. So if you want to learn more about supplements than we can talk about today in 30, 45 minutes, here are some of the ways you can do that. I talked about Consumer Lab already. That's my #1 choice. There's everything on there is evidence-based and backed up by science. There's also a website called aboutherbs.com, and that's maintained by Memorial Sloan Kettering. And it's mostly geared towards cancer type supplements, but there are definitely a lot of other ones there too. And these various other locations, National Institute of Health has the Office of Dietary Supplements, and they have great information sheets on a lot of vitamins mostly. There are some herbs there, but if you want to know what are all the ins and outs of vitamin B12, that's a great place to go. And then Dr. Weil's website. Dr. Andrew Weil is a leader in integrative medicine. He has been, you know, instrumental in training and getting doctors ready to practice integrative medicine at the University of Arizona. And his website has a section called Ask Dr. Weil. And you can ask a question there and it may get answered, but it's also likely that the question has already been answered, and you can search the archive to see, you know, whatever your question is, has that been discussed? And all of his information there is very trustworthy. So in particular, supplements in cancer has been an issue. There's a former US Senator, Claire McCaskill. She's the one who kind of dressed down Dr. Oz in front of the Senate a few years ago and raised a concern about interactions between dietary supplements and cancer treatment. And in the press release, she showed a study that said up to 70% of chemotherapy patients might not be telling their physicians about their use of dietary supplements. And this is, you know, not just her opinion, this is backed up by science. So that's a real issue. It's very important to tell all of your doctors about everything you use. There's no judgment, it's a judgment-free zone. Even cannabis, I get asked about cannabis on a regular basis, and it's important to let your doctors know if you use cannabis or CBD oil or anything like that, they're not, you know, going to judge you. That they just need to know in case there's any interference with anything, you know, that might be going on with you. And then even though there's evidence that some supplements have an anti-cancer effect, as I said earlier, there's no cure for cancer. There's no supplement that is, you know, known to be a treatment or cure for cancer. And that there are interactions that are possible. And the one I put on here, the tamoxifen, which a lot of women with breast cancer take, we found out a few years ago that this could interfere quite substantially with turmeric, or you know, curcumin it's also called. And this is a very popular herbal medication that it does have anti-cancer effects and can be very effective for inflammation, arthritis, and things like that. But you know, it can't be taken with the tamoxifen because it can actually inactivate it. this is that same poll I showed that about a little over a third of Americans believe that cancer can be cured through alternative medicine, and the younger people are more likely to believe that. And I think that's a little disturbing, but quite a bit more likely, actually, at 47% versus 21%. And if you do choose to just pursue alternative medicine instead of a conventional treatment, the studies do show that you have a 2.5 times more likelihood of dying from your cancer. So this kind of illustrates why we're here. We are here to provide trustworthy information about supplements and about other treatments. We don't just do herbs and vitamins. We offer all kinds of integrative medicine treatments such as acupuncture, massage therapy, special types of physical therapy, and so forth. And our doctors talk to patients about everything in their lifestyle, diet, exercise, anything that might improve someone's health. So I won't go into all the specifics like treatments for side effects of cancer treatments. If you have questions about that, I'll be happy to answer it. The main thing about using supplements with cancer treatment, both chemotherapy and radiation, we know that there's a possibility that certain supplements, particularly antioxidants, can potentially interfere with those treatments. So we always counsel people about that. And there's some evidence that fish oil may also have some interactions with some of the treatments that are used. So that is one of the things that we talk to people about. Vitamin D in cancer and with COVID now, there's pretty strong evidence for both that having low vitamin D levels is associated with certain types of cancer and other health problems. And they have also now linked low vitamin D levels to worse outcomes and more severe cases of COVID. So I think, that's another reason that supplement sales took off last year. It was things like vitamin D and zinc and all the things that people were talking about. So we do recommend that everyone over the age of 65 have a vitamin D level. That's just a kind of a regular screening that should be done, but isn't always done. It's something you have to ask your doctor for because it's not part of any lab panel that they normally do. We just want to see that your vitamin D is in a healthy range and then treat that if not. So there's a couple of interesting trials currently underway in Australia. Australia is where there's a hole in the ozone layer. So there's a huge incidence of skin cancer in Australia, and they are looking at whether taking vitamin D and maintaining a healthy vitamin D level will help to either prevent that or make the cases of melanoma less severe. And there are, like a lot of supplements, there are more than one form. There's more than one B vitamin, of course. There's more than one D vitamin, K vitamin. So you kind of have to know what you're going after. And we recommend the vitamin D3, which is the most likely one you're going to come across if you go into a vitamin store or health food store, versus the prescription form of vitamin D is actually synthetic, which is not surprising. And it has been found to, it's harder to get vitamin D levels into a healthy range on that, and it doesn't last as long. So unfortunately, if you go to the doctor and you come up with a low vitamin D level, they are likely to give you the prescription form and say, take one pill a week for 3 months or something. But we much prefer the vitamin D3 that you take every day. And then this study, he made be familiar with it. This is, I think, about 20 years old now, and investigators were looking at whether beta-carotene could treat lung cancer or prevent it. And they actually, it was a very large, well-done study, and they actually called it off early because what was found was that taking the beta-carotene supplements in smokers or former smokers was actually, they had an increased risk of lung cancer. So we recommend that anyone who smoked in the past or certainly currently smoking avoid beta-carotene, which is, it's a vitamin A. And if you look at the back of a bottle of multivitamins, it should tell you, it'll say vitamin A, it may say something like 50% as beta-carotene and 50% as retinol palmitate, which is the synthetic form of that. So I would just avoid all of those in lung cancer. And that leads to the question a lot, well, should I eat foods that have beta-carotene? And the answer is yes, definitely. We don't tell patients to avoid antioxidants in their diet or to avoid beta-carotene in their diet. You can eat carrots, you can eat yellow squash and other things like that that have the beta-carotene. Milk thistle is something that a lot of people use for liver ailments, or they've been taking, medications that are hard on the liver or metabolized through the liver. And there is, definitely the possibility of interaction again. And, there's also some evidence that the milk thistle may have good effects. And you just have to know for your specific because the drug interactions again are possible. Green tea is something that a lot of cancer patients use, and this we do feel like is very healthy for the most part. But again, there is a major interaction with a cancer drug called Velcade, so we can't use those together. There's some other interactions with the green tea. And of course, green tea does contain some caffeine. So that's an issue with some people. And then we get to medicinal mushrooms, which is something that I recommend quite a lot to our patients. And I don't know if you are familiar with those or not, but there are mushrooms that have medicinal properties. These are not like the button mushrooms that you see in the hair cedar or food lion. They're a little more exotic forms like shiitake and maitake, wood ear and lion's mane and all kinds. There's over 200 medicinal mushrooms, and these have also been very popular in the last year because they are immune stimulants, and they've been used traditionally in the Far East. They even have IV forms of some of these mushrooms as treatments for cancers. So you can definitely add these to your diet. If you like mushrooms, they need to be thoroughly cooked. And not all of them are available as foods. There's a couple of varieties that I recommend a lot. One is called turkey tail, and the other one is called reishi. And these are not available as edible mushrooms. You would not want to eat those, but they're available as supplements. And they can lower blood sugar, they can lower cholesterol levels. They're just really good foods to add to your diet. And if you'd like to read more about that, if you just Google medicinal mushrooms and National Cancer Institute, it'll give you a link to a patient handout about those that explains a lot of the science behind those. But that's something we recommend on a fairly regular basis. And then I mentioned the turmeric or curcumin. This is in the same family as ginger, and it's found in the most common foods that we see it in are curries, curry powder, and mustard. It's what gives mustard that bright yellow color. It definitely has anti-cancer properties. It's very good for inflammation. I use it a lot with patients that have arthritis and, both osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. It can be really helpful there. But again, it could have some blood thinning properties. It could interfere if you're on an anticoagulant or a blood thinner. It is this possibility it could interfere there. There have been cases where patients taking fairly large doses of this had an increased bleeding time during surgery. So that is one of the things that we recommend holding for at least 2 weeks prior to any surgery or dental procedure. And then, of course, CBD oil. This has been the biggest question over the last, 12 to 18 months. The biggest question we get by far is about CBD, and to cannabis, to some extent, a little bit lesser because cannabis is still not legal in this state. But the CBD products exploded after the Farm Bill of 2018 made the growing of hemp legal in all 50 states. So again, large profit margin, little regulation, a lot of products out there. You can find them in the gas station, the convenience store, your beauty salon, just about everywhere that this is being sold. And the prevalence of the products on the market is way ahead of the science backing those up. There's evidence that CBD oil is great for childhood seizures, and it's actually an approved drug by the FDA for that use, and that is the only FDA approved use so far. It's looking like the CBD is pretty good for restless legs and other movement disorders. It may be effective for that. Research is going on in pain and sleep, but the problem is some of the doses that have been studied, you can't really get those doses in the products that are available over the counter. I did the math one time on the doses that were recommended for sleep were like in the 200 to 300 milligram range. And if you took that much every night for a month for sleep, the products that are out there right now, it would cost you probably $300 to $400 a month, because again, the potency is just so low. So this is something that definitely shows promise, but we just don't have enough information out there yet. And there's some potential problems. And I think last I saw, there was about 40% of the products that were tested, the CBD oil products, did not have in the bottle what was promised on the label. So we do have, if we talk about CBD or recommend it, we do have a list of specific brands to send you to buy, not because we have any interest in those companies or whatever, but it's just, if you go out to the store and just ask the clerk or wherever you go to help you with that, it's no telling what you're going to actually end up with and whether that's going to be a good product or not. So these are kind of our guidelines about supplement use. There's no defined rule about supplement use during cancer treatment, and it's individualized to the patient, so it's best to get personalized advice on that. We tell patients to avoid antioxidants during chemotherapy and also during radiation. Avoid the fish oil during chemotherapy with certain drugs. And then again, you can eat antioxidants in your diet. There's no evidence that that is any problem. And check with a professional before you use any supplements, just the safest way to go. So I have time to take any questions you might have now.